Are we filming? Yes, we are. So welcome. This is a welcome to podcast number 48. We're heading towards 50 and I'm really pleased about that because it takes a long time to make these podcasts because they're around about an hour. If I'm suffering a bit with my cough, then I might do less than an hour, or I might do more if I get carried away. You know the score. But before we get into responding to some of your comments, let me just tell you what I've been using for the last week or so. Okay, so this is my main diary. It is a Me Plus in personal size. I'm using Clairefontaine 50 GSM paper, which I hand cut and scrumple. Or crumple. I've got a Pilot G2 with a 1mm broad nib, which is probably my favourite sort of go-to pen for when I'm out and about, or out and about in the house. But I have also been using, especially in cafes and restaurants, I'm using one of my cheap, less than £2. I've got about 100 of these. Fountain pens, plunger fountain pens, made in the Far East, with a fine or an extra fine nib. Hard to tell really, because there's so much variation from country to country. But I'm using black Quink, and I know from experience. I'm going to treat you to a little anecdote. So I was eating fish and chips at lunchtime a few days ago, which is like a traditional English dish, as you know. I mean, fish and chips is like traditional fare here. Very simple, very nice. Getting very expensive though, because fish is becoming very expensive. Even raw potatoes are getting very expensive, and the gas and electricity to cook fish and chips is getting more expensive. So we are losing a fish and chip shop a day in the UK because they can't afford to make ends meet and people are tightening their belts. But anyway, let me get back. I know for a fact that ketchup, tomato ketchup and Quink ink do not mix. It's quite acidic and it will dissolve your ink. So that's the lesson I learnt. Do not drip ketchup onto Quink ink, because it's never going to end. It's not going to end well. Luckily, I could remember what I wrote just about. But anyway, there we go. So those are the two pens I'm using. I'm finding I've got loads of these. I mean, I buy them in bulk. Why do I like these? Because you can write both sides of the page because there's no bleed through. There is no bleed through with these. They're very cheap and fantastic as notebooks, so very cheap. These have been going for, you've been able to buy, I remember buying these as a kid, and apparently the recipe for the paper in a mill here in the UK hasn't changed. So I'm told, for these heritage models. But I just want to mention this because I have been doing some experiments with Sylvine notebooks. So this is an exercise book I bought in a great store near me, and I'm trying to find out because I fired off an email to Sylvine, didn't respond. Probably I'm going to try a few times because I'm not judging them if they just. I need to switch my other phone off. Let's do that. Okay, I've got it on silent mode now. But I've been experimenting with a couple of additional Sylvine products. So this is an exercise book, and I thought that it was in the heritage range, but it's not in the heritage range. And this paper has got a sort of fairly shiny surface. The ink takes a little bit longer to dry. But this one, just a quick look at this. This is probably the ultimate test. It's a Tom Studio Architect nib, big, bold, in your face, with Noodler's Heart of Darkness. And I can say that although the paper stands up well, it is not as good as these Sylvine Heritage memo books. So I thought the paper was the same, but it is not. And then as you know, I'm always experimenting with this. So I thought I'm going to try one of these Sylvine lookalikes. It's very similar to a Moleskine or Moleskine hardback A5, and I thought I'd just test the ink just to see, and this is the result. And I'm rather disappointed because so I tried some things here. So the Heart of Darkness Architect nib again, and then Bay State Blue with a broad nib on a Twisby Go, and then Noodler's Anti-Feather with a fine nib. And what I can confirm is this isn't. I mean, it's better than many Moleskines I have tried, because Moleskines there's a lot of variation. It depends on the year and the where the paper comes from, and bit confusing because there's no consistency there. I mean, you could write on here. You can see that there's no bleed through with the fine nib. What am I using? Just Neil, remind yourself. What are you using? Noodler's Blue Anti-Feather. Okay, so with a fine nib, that's acceptable to me. You can barely see anything. There's no bleed through at all. There's a tiny bit of bleed through with the Bay State Blue, so that's probably not good. And the big, bold Architect nib with Noodler's Heart of Darkness, no, that's a no-no. So it is interesting. So I would say this paper, it has some bite to it. It's not super smooth, dries really quickly. I don't know what the GSM is because they don't list it for some reason. I'll have to look at their website, but it feels like probably 80 GSM, something like that. But I'm actually pretty pleased with this. Not only the quality of the construction, which is on a par with Moleskine, but also cheap, very cheap. I mean, how much would a Moleskine in A5 cost you, hardback like this? Probably about $25, £20, something like that. This £6, less. I think it's less than £6. I just bought it on Amazon on a whim. Less than £6. Very, very good value. Pretty good paper. Obviously, I don't know whether the paper is consistent, but I would say it's likely to be consistent because Sylvine use English-made paper, which is pretty good. And from an environmental perspective, buying a notebook where in the UK, certainly where the paper is also milled in the UK, is obviously it has less paper miles, as I call it, so there's a lower carbon footprint. I imagine. I'm no expert. So I quite like it, but I'm a little bit disappointed that it's not quite as good as this one, and these two are collectively not quite as good as these fabulous memo books. Although the flip side is, this isn't really good for a pocket notebook because it takes up to 30 seconds for the ink to dry, depending on how wet your nib is. So not always good. I do like writing on this in a cafe where I'm not sort of on the go. I'm sitting down for 30 minutes, and this is good. But that was supposed to be a few seconds. But just to finish off, I'm also using a cheap spiral bound notebook. This is pretty good for pen. This is pretty good for fountain pen because it dries almost instantaneously. It's pretty low grade paper. But if you're only using, because these are so cheap, these are like £1.50 for three of these. Incredible, at my local pound store or dollar store. And if you just use one side, then the bleed through doesn't matter. Lots of bleed through, but crucially, it dries almost instantaneously, even if you've got a very wet nib. So I quite like these, and I quite like the fact that they fold over, so less space, and also this doesn't smack money for an opportunity thief. It's just a notebook, isn't it? So I quite like these. And then I'm using my plotter Bible size or personal size for video ideas. I mean, I've got so many. I jot video guys. I'm gonna do a whole new video about why it works for me to jot things down in so many notebooks. So how does this system work? What am I doing with using so many notebooks? But all will be revealed soon, I hope. I've got probably 300 video ideas jotted down, and not exactly planned, but rough ideas. And I am, as you know, I'm so enthusiastic about this. But I can't do a video every day. But I am. What am I doing at the moment? Well, I'm trying to. The last couple of weeks, I haven't done 4 videos. But what I try and do is 2 videos. That's my aim. 2 videos for, and I'm not talking about shorts. 2 full-length videos for the wider viewing public, and a couple of extra ones for channel members, because they're paying me money, so it's only right that they get exclusive videos, and also they get early access. But what I would say, there is a bit of news, and I'm just gonna rock and roll with this for the moment. You will have noticed on my homepage that you'll see videos that are immediately available for everyone, and then you'll see videos that are exclusive for channel members, and also ones that are early access. Early access ones are typically, I'm getting into the habit of giving channel members a week or so early access, and those ones which are being shown as channel members only. They're not channel members only. It's just the YouTube algorithm puts them there. But if it says early access, it means you will get to see it a week later. So, I'll leave that with you. There is one thing that I need to mention, and you'll probably have noticed that. I have got a huge number of filofaxes that I have owned for a long time, and other brands as well, that I have yet to review, and yet over the last 2 weeks I've bought another 3 filofaxes. You cannot have too many filofaxes, but the kind of it might change. I'm constantly chopping changing, but at the moment what I'm doing is, and this is important, I have over the last couple of years, 3 years even, I've been, maybe 4 years, I have been kind of getting overexcited about a mail time. And mail times are popular. They're very popular, surprisingly popular. But then I get carried away and start like a mini review, or even quite a comprehensive view. So a mail time could last anything up to 45 minutes, which is crazy, I know, but it's just my style. I get enthusiastic about the videos I make. I'm really passionate about that, and you know the score. If you're a long-term viewer, you know how things are. But I'm thinking, I'm minded to. Okay, so what's happened is, I'm doing mail times plus a review, all in one video. And this is new stock that's coming in all the time, and those are exclusively for channel members. So I know I'm going to get some stick for that, but that is how I want to roll at the moment. However, all is not hidden away, because I am going to start reviewing video. I'm going to be starting doing comprehensive reviews of my older filofaxes, older as in I have had them for some time, so there's no mail time, and I'm going to do a comprehensive review. So there will be 2 reviews. So you will see ones I already have being reviewed, and that's for the wider viewing public. And then the new ones coming in, I'm doing a combined mail time and kind of mini review that can sometimes get out of control and end up as a long review. So that's why I'm not doing any mail times anymore. It's because it's a combined mail time, unboxing, unbagging, and a review. I quite like that. Because there is this raw excitement, isn't there, when you buy something, whether it be a new car or a new bike or a new filofax, new to you, new to me. There is a certain excitement, a frisson of excitement when that happens. And I'm finding, because I have some, I'd like to think I'm fairly knowledgeable about binders. It means that off the top of my head, I'm kind of moving into a sort of excited review, if you like, which starts off on mail time and ends up for review. So anyway, that is what I'm doing. The one final thing is, this is still my EDC. I tend to not the notes in here, and the pen is in here. My EDC pen, which is the Tom Studio with Tom Studio Mini Lumos in brass. Got a real heft to it. I like that. And then the Tom Studio Loop, which is attached to, well, as you can see, it's attached to one of the treasury tags. This is a D-ringed Portland filofax. D-rings because the rings fell apart. And then I thought, actually, why not use treasury tags? And that's working perfectly for me. So I've still got the notes in here, but I'm just basically using it as a wallet and an emergency notebook. And then I will depending on what I'm doing, I don't carry my personal Me Plus very often outside, but I'm tending to carry one or other of these. So I've got at least something, or even just a single sheet of folded A4 paper in my back pocket, my jeans pocket. That can work very, very well as well. Who's going to nick a piece of paper? So it's very, very easy to have one or more places where you can jot down notes, and one or more pens, typically a Pilot G2. I've got my EDC Lumos loaded with Heart of Darkness in my Portland wallet, stroke notebook, stroke emergency notebook. So the key thing is, and I don't know how long we've been going, but this is supposed to my fault. I should have done this at the end, shouldn't I? Or a separate video, but it is what it is. So it's working well, and I'm experimenting all the time, as you would expect, because this is my passion. This is what I do, and I want to share it with you guys. So shall we get on with podcast 48? Let's do it. Okay, so the first comment. I can't, forgive me if I pronounce it wrong, but Zanaxionov says, in response to my video titled "Why I Paid £208 for a planner and Don't Regret It," and they say, to be honest, I would really like you to try a mechanical pencil because as a writing tool, and make a video about it, because I've been using it for some time now and realised that in my case, this is the cheapest and at the same time high quality and pleasant way to make recordings that are very well archived, because the graphite trace is resistant to both moisture and the sun. Its only weak point is the friction with which it can be erased, but this almost never happens during normal use. Before that, I used fountain pens, then switched to gel pens because it seemed to me that they were more practical, and this is really the case. I even tried ballpoint pens, premium ones too. For example, I have a Parker Jotter and a Parker IM, but a mechanical pencil turned out to be the best tool for me personally, and it seems to me that it can suit many more people. They just don't think about it. Well, I totally agree with this commenter. It isn't for me because I like the big, bold, I like the contrast. I like the contrast of, for instance, a Pilot G2 gel pen with a broad nib, a 1mm broad nib, because I can see it more easily with my eyesight. Not that I can't see, because I'm licensed to drive, so my 20/20 vision, my distant vision, on point. But my reading, sometimes I don't have my reading glasses with me, and so I can write something down with my Pilot G2, and even though it's slightly blurred, I have to scrunch my eyes up to see, I can see it. I can see it. Whereas if I used a pencil, so this is one of those ones with a choice of pencils, so I could do that. I can't see it quite as clearly, and so that means I've got to faff about and get my glasses on. Oh yes, I can see what I've written in pencil. So for that reason alone, for me, I mean, my weapon of choice has always been a Pilot G2 for many years, and before that a Pilot V7, but that's a sort of different style. This 1mm blue nib is really good, and that's the reason for my interest in Bay State Blue, which is the sort of really deep and bright, maybe that's a misnomer, cobalt blue. It's just, there's so much, it's so in your face that it is easier on my eye as I'm scanning across the page, because if you have your book, you're writing at an angle, there's only your eyes, without realizing it, are working hard as you move across the page, unless it's absolutely at 90 degrees to the point where your eyeball is. Your eyes, without you even knowing it, will be zooming as you move along. It'll be zooming slowly out, or if you have it like this, zooming slightly in, and so your eyeball, the corneas are working flat out to within the limits of your eyesight. If you are, if you're having to reuse reading glasses, there is. I mean, I'm unnecessarily going into this whole thing, but it's giving your eyes a bit of a workout if you're using pencil. However, if you are using something bold like a broad tip Pilot G2, then my theory is you're not actually, your eyes are saying, your brain is telling you, telling your eyeballs, you don't need to focus absolutely spot on, because the contrast is so great. I can see it, the message, the image that is being presented to my brain, I can interpret it even if it's slightly blurred. Does that make sense? So that is my theory. I definitely feel that writing with a high contrast pen, so a fountain pen at home in my journal, or Pilot G2 when I'm out, is superior. It's easier for me than write in pencil. But I totally get it. If you, where I live, or where I used to live in England, there was some pencil graffiti at the local inn, the local. What's the equivalent to an inn in the States? Not sure, but a pub up in the attic of this, what is now a pub, but it used to be a coaching inn in the 18th century. The attic spaces are where the servants used to sleep, and there's inevitably some graffiti, but this is a listed building, and the graffiti is of specific interest historically because it's some of the earliest lead pencil writing or drawing out there, very, very early from a historical perspective. And you can see it, and it's a lovely thing, and it's there. I suspect that if you were looking at the equivalent ball pen or fountain pen, maybe it would still be there. But the thing is, you get a bit of rain through the roof or sunlight, and it's going to fade. The commentator is absolutely spot on with this. Pencil in a journal, for instance, probably, unless you've got some malevolent descendant that decides to take a rubber to an eraser to your pencil, it probably is more likely to last several hundred years than some types think. Who knows? But it's worth thinking about. Okay, so I was talking about the true cost of a filofax, why some binders last a lifetime and some don't. And Alma Lauha says, I've seen quite a lot of filofaxes in the past few years, and some are a lot better quality than others. This is what they say. Just got a second-hand Domino A5, and the inside grey faux, that means imitation, the faux suede or something like it, just crumbled when barely touching it. It's probably to do with how and where it was stored, how cold it is, etc. I've also seen some coated leather covers that just crack and look quite poor, despite the organiser barely being used. Well, I could talk for several hours about this very subject, but you'll be relieved to know I'm not. I'm just, because this is a podcast, and I have talked about this situation at length. There are some, as we know, filofax models made of man-made materials where there's more than one layer, or there is like a polyurethane coating or similar on top of the leather. So it is. I mean, as the viewer says, it's to a certain extent depends on how you store and use a binder. So, for instance, we know that some coatings, I believe it's a plasticizer that's within the coatings. If your binder is sitting on a desk with a window and there's sunlight, the ultraviolet light, I think that's the real killer, isn't it? That can result in the sort of plasticizers evaporating and then your binder sort of cracking. Up until that moment, the coatings can be very useful because they can protect your binder from the coffee stains, that sort of thing. But as you know, one of my bugbears is the fact that and I've asked Filofax about this. I haven't had a response, but I'm not judging. But I personally think on the cheaper binders, the budget binders, where there is like a coating of a thin layer of leather bonded onto a largely man-made plastic binder with sort of several layers. There's a lot of effort goes into making a binder. There's a lot of manufacturing processes making a modern binder, and you sometimes think all that effort just to avoid buying a piece of top grade leather. But I guess the reason why is because these binders are being made in places where the labour rates are very, very dirt cheap, and so the additional cost in terms of time of going to these enormous lengths to coat and reinforce like a thin layer of leather, that must be more an economical way of doing it. But the obviously the problem is your binder, if it's used in anger, and let's face it, most people don't buy a binder as storage. They're going to use the thing. It doesn't last nearly as long as a binder that has leather. But I would say, and this is my opinion, I have got several binders that are just a piece of cardboard with some rings, or a plastic, a vinyl binder, which is basically cardboard encapsulated in a vinyl covering. If you're gonna have a plastic binder, you might as well embrace it and just have I mean, here am I talking about using this as a weapon of choice in a cafe, and it's just 3 of these for about £1.50 here in the UK. This isn't fancy, but it works. It works, and it's got good flatability, and it's it actually works. So it doesn't have to be anything fancy, but my gut feeling with something like what was the reader saying, the viewer. They were saying they bought a Domino, a Domino A5. Well, the Domino A5 is more or less the cheapest in the range, but it's perfectly good. I have got one Domino. I have bought a Domino, a very well used Domino, to have a look at it and see just it's chipped and flaky and spongy, and it's not ideal. It's not ideal, but I bought it specifically to examine how a Domino deteriorates with use, and it's clearly not ideal. But it's cheap, it's cheap. It will last a few years with care. And I've also, as you know, consistently aired my feelings about like the Guildford Mini Extra Slim, where I believe it's the greatest form factor, it's the greatest design of any filofax binder ever made. It just so happens to be the smallest one, so 5 rings, mini size, but extra small and extra slim. And I've said, why go to the extra manufacturing cost of trying to create like a fake leather interior lining, where the lining is that leather lining is mounted, which tends to peel, and then that lining is stuck onto a kind of spongy middle layer that, once it's exposed to light, starts to go very flaky and rubbery. Bits fall off. A bit like if you get a rubber and rub it on a piece of paper, you get all those tiny little bits of those tiny little balls of rubber. That's how it works. And then underneath, it's actually a very, very nice blue-grey fabric material. And I've suggested again, I didn't get any response, but oh dear. I said, instead of building up all these layers which aren't going to potentially stand up to the rigors of use of a binder, why not just don't use any, don't try and build it up, just use the base fabric as the lining. So yeah, it is a tricky thing, but I would say one way round this, if you want a no nonsense binder that's dirt cheap and functional and easy to clean and won't deteriorate into tiny bits of tiny bits of specks of rubber or whatever it is, you could go a lot. You could do a lot wrong by just having either a cardboard binder, which might cost you £2 or £3, or a slightly more upmarket version of that, and just have a cardboard binder where it's covered in vinyl. A bit like, the ring binders we had at school, or the ring binders you typically have in an office. That to me, that's perfect. Obviously, it's really nice to have something that is, the best leather known to, fantastic leather, fantastic rings. But from a working perspective, if you're taking something to the office, it may be better to have something made of vinyl, particularly since if you put this, potentially it's absorbent leather at the end of the day. If it will absorb a dye, then it will absorb coffee stains in a cafe, or worse, it may absorb the saliva of the toddler that was messing food in the cafe, the same seat that you inherited when they left and you arrived, so it might be best if you're if you're part of cafe culture, if you like, analog cafe culture, to have something made of vinyl and be done with it, and perfect flatability into the bargain. So that's my theory, and I'm sticking to it. Okay, one of my channel members, Ivan, responded to a video I made entitled "How I Solved the Travelling Inkwell Problem, a Practical Experiment." So the inkwell is this, a Nalgene 1 ounce or 30 milliliters in new money. And I have found through experimentation that this is leak proof. It's just the right amount of fuel if I'm going on a bike ride, and then I take a brew kit with me, which is basically a stove and some alcohol fuel, and then I can make one of my coffees. And I love my coffee. I love my tea, but I'm kind of more of a coffee drinker. But I thought, could I use one of these as an inkwell? And in the video, I explain why this is the perfect inkwell, potentially. And Ivan says, I recently put a Kaweco partridge. We're not at Christmas yet. I recently put a Kaweco cartridge in my sport pen, so Kaweco sport pen, and was surprised that the ink came out of the pen super faded. Now that's an interesting one. I haven't come across that before. Not something it did when the cartridges were new. I suspect the ink is breaking down within the cartridge. So these Kaweco cartridges. I'm a big fan of Kaweco sport pens. I've probably got about 10 of them. Most of them fountain pens. I'm okay with these cartridges, but something happened on a recent camping trip a few months ago where the paper got really wet and the ink basically turned almost into invisible ink. I couldn't, it was what I had written could not be reread. So I kind of, these are what I call indoor cartridges, but don't take them outside. Don't take them outside, and don't use these as a notebook in the bath. You know, if you want to do the sort of whole Marat thing in the French Revolution, where you're writing in the bath, because that will end in tears. That will end in tears. But Ivan says, I suspect the ink is breaking down within the cartridge. As for carrying around ink, when I used to travel for work, I carried ink sample vials which held 5 milliliter. I'm not quite sure. Ivan, if you're listening to this, send me a picture. Message me with one of those vials so that I can see what you're talking about. So I can understand the size, 5 milliliters, and it's an ink sample container. But I would like to see. And he says, I became quite adept at holding the ink vial and pen in one hand and operating the converter or piston with the other. Ivan, make a video about this, and I'll share it on my channel. I'll put a link to your video in it at the end cards of a channel. And by the way, I digress, but if you're a channel member and you have an interesting video, I will actually publicize that for if I enjoy it. If I enjoy that, I might just add a link to your video in my end cards or in the description. Not sure which, but so we can spread the love. But that would be a very interesting video for me to look at. So please do one if you have the time. Okay, I became quite adept at holding the ink vial and pen with one hand and operating the converter or piston with the other. Okay, later I stopped carrying the vials because I had enough pens with me. I have a 10-pen case for travel that I could switch to another pen if the ink ran out. Now, this is a really, really important idea. Here am I, extolling the virtues of carrying some spare ink, but that's great if you have a favourite pen or an expensive pen. I think this cost something like £80, so it's some people might argue that is an expensive pen. This is my Tom Studio pen. It's all aluminium, wonderful nib, and I've only got one of these. But I have 100 of these. So what's in here? This is Diamine Pumpkin, which is an ink I really, really like. And I really rate these pens. So I will, if I can remember, I will leave a link in the description. Or alternatively, if you want the link to this, just leave me a comment and in this video, and I will add the link rather than just put it down there. If anyone's interested in what these pens are and where I get them from, well, I get them from Amazon, but they are a super pen. And in fact, Ivan, my channel member here, he also rates these as well. So we've both tested these, and they're very, very cheap. You can get sort of 4 of them for about £6 here in the UK. So fantastic. So if I was just using one of these, then it would probably be easier to just carry 3 or 4 of these. But if I was using a more expensive pen, if I only had one pen, then the option I guess the option would be to carry a portable ink well. Then I discovered and I haven't seen one of these. Then I discovered the Visconti travelling inkwell, and that was a game changer. The internals of the inkwell will make it so that you can fill a pen without worrying about spilling ink. Again, I haven't seen one of these, so Ivan, let me know, and then I'll have a look at it. Sounds interesting. Anyway, Ivan goes on about. Let me just see. Okay. He says, I don't travel much anymore, so if I need to carry ink, I'll just use the same sample vials. One thing can be said about those Nalgene bottles. You can hold way more ink than I can carry in a sample vial. Yes, I really like this, because if you've got a very, very small, narrow inkwell, when you fill up, the ink will fall significantly, and you think to yourself, well, why don't I have an extra tall vial? But then you have half the pen disappearing into the, you have to go further down the well. So if you have something like this, because the width is the same as the depth, more or less, it means that when you draw some ink from here, you could probably, obviously you can't, unless you have a dropper pen, you can't really use up all the ink. But from here, I'm imagining that with this is a converter in here, I can just put the pen in at an angle, and then you can probably draw maybe 4 or 5 refills, converter refills with this. And also the other thing, which I have been enjoying using this, I've been using it for the last couple of weeks or so, is that rather than hold it up and just dip the pen and look at it from the side, you can easily see from above whether your nib is under the surface of the ink, and so that makes it much easier to fill up than using a narrower bottle, and it's clear plastic. If you look at, for instance, the bottles made by, it's like Diamine, so it's dark glass. And if you're looking at the smaller versions, they're just made of black plastic, so it's very difficult to get the right ink. And also with a narrow one, because we all remember Archimedes, with shouting "Eureka" as he got into his bath. As the ink is displaced, as you put the pen in the ink, with a tall narrow inkwell, the ink level is going to rise considerably, which means you're going to have to account for that when you fill the ink bottle. You have to be very, very careful. Whereas here it's a little bit easier, because the displacement rise in height of the ink is going to be significantly less with a greater surface area on the ink. Does that make sense? So yes, I'm just having a quick look to see what else. No, we're all right. We're okay. Okay, next comment. Okay, and I like this channel name, Hyperspace 32. Fabulous. Isn't that fabulous? So they say, and this is response to podcast 46. They say, I'm a big fan of organisers. However, filofax binders are heavy, they don't lay flat, and you can't flip them 360. They're too bulky to stick in my bag or use on the move. I've been waiting for filofaxes to produce the perfect product for me. So far, nothing exists. Every year, around the end of the year, I scour the internet and stores looking for a perfect diary, only to come up empty-handed. Okay. I loved the black and red wire-bound notebooks in A4. I like its solid cover, great paper, very true. Very true. If any of you out there have not tried black and red, it's kind of like they call it an optic paper. Very, very good with fountain pen. But I think from memory, you still have to be careful if you've got an extra wet pen. But don't quote me on it. Have a look, because the recipes can change. You know, it's all very well talking about a wonderful notebook from a company that's been going along, but look at Moleskine, for instance. No one is going to accept if you do a review and you just by pure chance you have a Moleskine that uses a fountain pen friendly paper. I think I've had about 20 of the 20 Moleskines I've had one that is really good, but it doesn't that doesn't give you any measure of the likelihood of getting that paper yourself. So it's a bit iffy. But try black and red. Try one. The paper quality is great. So why can't anyone make a decent diary in that format? Essentially, I want a 2-in-1 product, a notebook and diary combined, with the convenience of an organizer that allows me to add and remove pages. If I win the lottery, this is the first product I will develop. So let me hold up the product that I think may completely solve your problems. Okay, so it's not a filofax, but it is a personal size binder compatible with personal size inserts. It's made by Me Plus. Plotter make a similar product, so that this is virtually identical. And then we've got another one here from Woozy Studio. Very, very simple designs. But if you're looking for something that has notebook space and diary space, my recommendation, I'm not saying it's a recommendation, but certainly what I do, and I'm holding up the Me Plus simply because I'm using the Me Plus for the very purpose to which you aspire, and that is, I'm well known for just using blank paper, and then what I do, and I'll just do this. So let me hold up this. Okay, so I've got nothing on the 18th of November, but it's just paper, and I just roughly draw some lines here, and I've got space for appointments, space for like a mini sort of journal, which I can then refer to when I'm writing my journal in the evening, and then I've got all these grids where I use those as a to-do list, but appointments go here. This works very, very well, but I would never, ever, ever in a month of Sundays find this kind of insert. It's just hand-drawn. And I go so far, I mean, I'm brutal with these because I'm not interested in whether it looks fancy. I'm only interested in performance, the brutal utilitarian nature of pen and paper to note down things that I need to refer to in the future. And when you break things down, that is what you want. Now, I know that some people, and everybody's different, some people like order, they like things neat and tidy. And I know, for instance, I've not mentioned this before. I might have mentioned this before, but I suffer from ADHD, and I've had it since birth. I don't see it as an infliction. I see it as a gift, because it's probably the reason why I have been fascinated with notebooks since primary school. I used to use these a lot because they were cheap, and I used a fountain pen because my grandfather gave me a fountain pen when I was about, I don't know, 8 or 9, I think. I can't remember. But I've been fascinated with different coloured inks, and from a very early age. But I think the ADHD, I'm just digressing here, but I have a foot in two camps. So I have a very creative side. I'm always thinking of, artistic things, and I think that goes some way to explain my my interest in writing things down. But also I have a foot in this, from a career point of view. I've always had a job based in the sciences, but a side hustle based in the arts, which is quite an interesting thing. And maybe that has helped my mind, where I'm constantly chopping and changing from one idea to another. It's probably, I'm doing some self-evaluation here. I mean, it's a big digression, I know, but it's probably the reason why when I make these videos, I sometimes fly off into a digression like I'm doing now. But what I'll do is suggest that if you cannot find, as you point out, if you cannot find the setup that works for you, I would recommend two things. Get a binder that has good flatability, and you know what a flatability is. It's one that opens and stays open, rather than something that I'm trying to find one that. Have I got one here? No, I've put it away. Half the battle is having a binder that has good flatability. Okay, so there are some filofax models, particularly the older models, the vintage models, that give you perfect flatability. But if you can't find a filofax model that gives you that, then there are plenty of other models from rival manufacturers like the Me Plus and the Plotter and the Woozy Studio, and there are many more that are specifically make sure that the leather does open and stay open. So do that, then experiment with paper, and there's a big advantage. There's a big advantage choosing your own paper, because I have actually been very, very impressed with filofax paper recently, because they make paper that is ostensibly fountain pen friendly. And although from my personal experience, it's not fountain pen friendly with a big, fat, wet nib like my Tom Studio one here, it is pretty damn good with ink and a fine nib. So fair play to filofax for making sort of diary inserts with that paper. But as the viewer suggests, they can't find a setup. They can't find a setup that works for them. But this is the beauty of this. I can choose my own layout. I can choose critically my own paper. So if I'm using predominantly not a fountain pen, I'm using a Pilot G2. So there's not a bleed through issue. I can use very, very thin, cheap paper. This is the paper that I tend to use in my diaries, which is Clairefontaine 50 GSM paper. Very, very cheap indeed. And just nice. And I scrumple up these pages, as some people know. Let me just demonstrate this. So here I'm scrumpling the paper, and that allows me, when I close the binder, it allows me, and these are hand cut, it allows me to more easily thumb through. And sometimes with super perfect cut inserts, you're sort of trying to open, they stick together, don't they? And you're trying to open them. I don't have the problem because I hand scrunch them. I'm absolutely brutal in my desire for functionality. Even if it looks ugly, function is everything. It is everything when I'm writing a diary. I'm a little bit neater and tidier when I write my journal, but that's another story, because I want it to be attractive for my future descendants to read and not think, my great-great-grandfather here, he's a really messy with his journal. I wonder what sort of person he is. So I'm digressing again. It's the ADHD coming in. And yeah, I see ADHD as a wonderful gift. It's not an impediment to my life. But I'm just sharing that between me and you. Nobody else, just me and you. But the key advantage with setting up your own inserts is you can choose to have really expensive paper, really cheap paper. You can go for Tomo River paper, which is really thin but has very minimal bleed through. You can use like a thicker paper, or you can use lined paper. You can use unlined paper and draw your own grids, your to-do grids, as I'm a big fan of, and what gratifies me is a lot of people have adopted that grids, and so I love. It's not like the desire of to be influential per se, but it's really nice to get a bit of feedback saying, I really like your diary, I'm going to try that. Thanks very much for the tip. Yeah, it's always nice to receive that sort of feedback. But if you are struggling, if you want clearly you're an individual, and I'm referring to you here directly. If you're an individual that clearly wants a certain kind of paper and clearly wants a binder that opens with good flatability, opens and stays open without any manual intervention, and clearly wants inserts that fit in with your own requirements, to have a diary and then a notebook. And I'll let you into a secret on this. I'm experimenting with this. The first half is my diary, and then the second half is there's quite a lot of notes in here. The second half is just blank pages, so I can make notes. So this sort of setup would fulfill your requirements. And as you say, you've been looking and can't find anything that satisfies your particular requirements. So I would say, get a binder that's got good flatability. Think outside the box. This is harsh, but if you want good flatability, I would say forget a modern filofax, because you probably will be disappointed. Look at either vintage filofax binders made of leather that are worn in enough, broken in enough, so that the binder does have good flatability, and it's no guarantee that it will. There are some models that have good flatability from the day one, in a sort of sweet spot era, just towards the very end of UK manufacture. The one that if you said to me, Neil, what binder would you get if you wanted good flatability, reasonably economical to buy, fantastic quality, it is the 1993 Sherwood. Jot that down and set up an alert on eBay for a 1993 Sherwood. Later models, 94 onwards, filofax kind of cheapens the leather, so they're okay, but they're not quite as nice. So 1993 Sherwood, that's what you want if you want good flatability, or a vintage binder that's if you want one with pockets, that is. Where you can have everything in one place. So that's the one I'd recommend. And I can't think of many really that are okay. Although I'll give you an example. This is it's a compact Finsbury. This has perfect flatability, and it looks very nice. But then what lets it down is the leather on the outside tends to wear and gets really, really nasty, and you can see the layers of cardboard underneath. So there are some that have good flatability, but you have to be careful. Ask around. So I would go for if you're going for a slimline one with no pockets, my recommendation is a Me Plus that has good flatability and no pockets, and is I think this is about I don't know, about £100, something like that. So not super expensive, but made of the finest leather. I mean it's leather to die for, with Krauss rings, which are the best you can get. So something like this for about £100, maybe a little bit more. But if you look at the cost of ownership of something like this, it's about the same price as a filofax Norfolk. So it's not super high price, but it is super high quality materials. If you want something where everything is in one place, I would recommend a 93 Sherwood, and be very careful that you get a 93 one and not a 94. Got to look at the photos. Really got to look at the photos. In fact, I will actually be making a video soon so you can spot the differences between an early Sherwood and a later Sherwood, because I do know that there are a lot of people out there that might be saying, what's Neil saying? Is it what are the differences? Should he? I think I'm going to ask him. So I'm preempting that, and I'm going to do a video at some point. But notwithstanding that, pick a binder that has good flatability, and then either draw them out on the computer and then print them, or just do what I do and just draw lines, just freehand, and then you can have exactly how much space you want. And I mean, it is just. I am going to leave it there because that is we're over the hour now, and I didn't do as many as I thought. So maybe the next one I might do one sort of maybe next week or something, where I'm going to do a podcast version number 49 to kind of clear the backlog. What I mean backlog is I have many more comments being sent to me, and I'm very grateful, and some of them are really interesting. And if you send me a comment that I find interesting, and I'm quite nerdy about this sort of thing, I find a lot of this sort of stuff very interesting. So send me a message. In any video, you can leave a message in the comments. They are pre-moderated to keep everything family friendly, so you won't see your comment appear straight away. Might be typically you'll see your message appear within 24 hours typically, unless I'm in hospital or something. And then I will either just reply to it via another message, or I will respond. You may be featured in a podcast, and as some people have discovered, sometimes I'll make a whole video about just one viewer's comments. I'm more likely to do that if you are a channel member. Just a little plug before I go. Channel membership costs £1 or the equivalent in your own currency, and it opens a whole raft of exclusive videos, some of which are really, really hard hitting, that I prefer to just make for my channel members only. And you are very welcome to join us on, I was going to say the dark side, but it's not. It's just the same, but there's a lot more of it, and you get priority. I'm more likely to answer your comments because I now have absolutely got to the point where I cannot answer everybody's comment. I'm very sorry about that, but I have reached that point. Become a member and see what I have to offer, even if it's just for there's no commitment. If pay your quid and binge watch. I think it's approaching 100 videos now, maybe even more. I can't quite. I haven't counted them. And then cancel your membership after that, and it's only cost you £1 for many hours of infotainment. There we go. But anyway, thanks very much. Sorry about the plug. And until my next video, goodbye.